Alright, so in this video, I'm going to teach you how to unlock drunken levels of confidence, drunken levels of social skills and conversational ability. Maybe minus the sloppiness that you get when you're drunk, but still, drunken levels of social confidence when you are stone cold sober. This is something I've been working on for a while because, I'm a young guy. Let me just get this out of the way. I do drink and I do consider myself confident, but I've been a little bit disturbed by how even now, how given the amount of things I've done while sober, which took like a lot of balls, I still kind of come back to alcohol when it comes to going out. And some of that is because I want to, I want to have a good night, want to relax after work. But I don't like how sometimes it can feel like a bit of a crutch. So this is something I'm trying to develop. How do I get what I love about alcohol and apply that to my social life when I'm sober? So the things I think alcohol does for me: lowers my inhibitions, calms my anxiety. I feel less nervous, especially around new people or girls. Most of all though, stops me from overthinking. It closes that little half a second gap between my brain and my mouth, where I would usually talk myself out of saying something. I convince myself that this is too dumb to say, I'm not going to say it. If I say this, then the group are going to look down on me. Whereas when you're drunk, you kind of just say whatever. You're not really worried about what comes out of your mouth. Usually it is some dumb shit. But it feels right at the time. And you're not worried about the consequences of what you say, for better or worse. You just don't police your thoughts as much. And also when it comes to things like keeping a conversation going, you're not hung up on every word. You're not constantly thinking about, okay, what's the next sentence that's going to come out of my mouth so I can keep this conversation going. You're kind of you've got that flow from one topic to another. Doesn't feel forced. Feels natural. And the things that you're saying, regardless of how dumb they are, people seem to like that. That's how I've always felt like when I'm drunk. I just kind of unlock this more natural side of my personality. And I have to believe that that exists within me, not just me, but within all of us, because it's coming from somewhere. It's just maybe alcohol allows us to access that state a little bit easier, but it exists for everyone. And I 100% believe you can access this when you're sober. So, the skill that we're going to talk about, which I've been developing over the last year, and it takes a bit of time to master, don't get me wrong, but you can start small and progress fairly quickly with this, like I've done. So, the skill is never, it doesn't sound like a skill, never doubting any single sentence that comes out of your mouth. Any word or sentence, never doubting it. Always just believing, I'm perfectly within my rights to say this. Whatever I say is perfectly acceptable. Now, I'm not 100% sure if that makes sense, but where this is coming from is, I think where we go wrong when we're sober, coming back to that thing about over-policing your language, putting everything through that filter of, if I say this, what is everyone around me going to think? Rather than just kind of saying what feels right. We think almost too much. It's good to think about what you say, but not too much to the point where you're just hesitating constantly. So this skill of never really doubting the things that come out of your mouth, I first learnt about this because I was specifically learning about like conviction. Conviction is like how much you like mean what you say, like the power and importance behind the things, basically your belief in what you're saying. Like this is a good skill for YouTube. And it doesn't really matter like what you say. If you're trying to persuade something or trying to be an interesting or captivating speaker, something really important that I learned was what you actually say. Like you could be saying the most well thought out argument. You could be debating the best point. If you don't believe in what you say, if you don't have that conviction, you're not going to be able to persuade the other person. This applies to just in conversations as well. What I always found was the guys who I'd go out with, people who seemed more charismatic than me, communicating seemed easy to them. They were just relaxed about the whole thing. They could have the entire group in stitches, just laughing, like the room would erupt after they said something. And I think, wow, like why can't I have this effect on people? How do they feel like so at ease? How do they just always know what to say? And then I think I have some little brainwave like, bro, like this guy, the joke he actually made just wasn't that intelligent. The joke he made was like kind of dumb. Like if I said that, I'm 90% sure no one would laugh like that. But it's the meaning, it's the way that these people would say the jokes. They don't doubt or hesitate when they're saying it. You know, if I'd half-assed the delivery of like a good joke, the joke would fall flat. But when you say it with full comfort and confidence in what you're saying, that's when it goes down well. That is the key to being a good conversationalist and speaker in general. So, yeah, something else I'd just like to add to that is there are situations where what am I trying to say? Where if you're like a little bit afraid of, I've had this situation in the office. Like I work in a big office, let's imagine. Sometimes I'm having a conversation with someone from like one desk over. There's a bit of distance in between us. And I'll start off like talking and then suddenly halfway through I'll become conscious that like everyone's watching me. And it's just like that, my delivery starts to change. It starts to become like a bit more nervous. I start to speak more quietly. And I'm not even aware of this as it's happening. But that's a consequence of me no longer trusting in what I'm saying. I don't have the same level of belief in what I'm saying because I'm kind of worried about who's listening. So part of this is just having the trust and confidence in what you're saying, no matter what you're saying, to speak like no one else is listening. So yeah, how we develop this skill, it's as simple as speaking up when you wouldn't usually. Speaking in situations where you would say stay quiet. You can do this in so many different ways, but the reason this works is because it's eliminating that split second of hesitation I was talking about. The moments where you talk yourself out of opening your mouth because you think it's going to come at some cost to your reputation. And specifically, it's tapping in to that part of your brain that just doesn't exist when you're drunk. Or what am I talking about? It's getting rid of that part of your brain that just doesn't exist when you're drunk, that hesitation. The ability to just kind of bounce from one topic to another or just say whatever without really like filtering it, without talking yourself out of it. You don't have that when you're drunk, and you can eliminate that to like such a small amount when sober by practicing this skill of speaking up when you wouldn't usually. So how have I been doing this? So I spend a lot of time at work and I'm quite early on in my career, but there's still a certain expectation on me to present and speak up, So a certain amount of that is mandatory for me, and that's good for getting out of my comfort zone. But there have been times like in between those moments where I'll just stay completely silent for a whole meeting. I'll just be sitting there saying nothing, anonymous. And I almost become like kind of a passenger, like people could forget I was there. So it's in these moments, like whenever some random thought comes into my head, like I have something to share. I know that I have some kind of point to share. And usually I'll talk myself out of it, like think no one wants to hear what I've got to say. Or I don't really know what I'm talking about. It's in those moments where you should be speaking up. Especially in those moments where you feel like, okay, this actually isn't that valuable. Because recognize whatever you say, this is part of having full confidence in what you say. Your contribution in itself is valuable. You opening your mouth and saying anything, that is valuable. That is asserting your presence as an individual. Especially in these group settings where it would be easier to just coast it and not say anything. This is when the most growth happens for this particular skill. Speaking up in meetings or in social situations, everyone's making a joke, or everyone, maybe it's like being dominated by one or two people. You can't really find space to contribute. And then you kind of start to think, okay, it would be dumb if I open my mouth now. That's when you should open your mouth. Let me get this through your head. Even if you just say what's on your mind or something kind of stupid, as long as you're not thinking about it too much, as long as it kind of feels right in the moment, generally I would just say it. Provided it's not something like ultra offensive or, you're not like trying to hurt someone on purpose, most things are on the cards for me. Because every time you do that, you're training that skill. You're making it easier to just unlock that natural dialogue that you would have when you're drunk, where you're not thinking too deeply about what you say. You're not getting super self-conscious. Just fucking say it. Say it and have confidence that nothing bad will happen, because 99% of the time, nothing bad does happen. Man, okay, another example. I just joined a new team at work, literally day one. Usually I just keep my head down. I start to think in my head that, I'm the new guy, I should just shut up and get on with my work. These guys don't, I'm intruding on their work banter. They don't want the new guy to take part. It's crazy that we even have those thoughts. That's actually insane to me that my brain can just fucking blackball me that much. But as soon as these guys started talking about something which I knew I could contribute, like football, or they were talking about old PS2 games, I was like, this is my opportunity. This is when I need to speak. I need to show off my personality, my character. And that's exactly what I did. It's sometimes those opportunities will just come up for you to contribute. And if you don't do it, this will get harder. You will retreat further and further back into your brain and make the problem worse. Use those opportunities to your advantage, and this whole thing will get a lot easier. So that is the solution. There's other ways of going about this, which I will talk about. Maybe other ways, other routes to unlocking that drunk charisma. But just speak up in situations where you wouldn't. Get used to just saying what's on your mind, just sharing any little random thought. No one is going to fucking hate you for doing that. At the end of the day, we're all within our rights to speak up, to say anything. Don't let life pass you by. And this will get easier with time. Thank you very much.